Hey everyone, and welcome back to the EdgeVerse TechCast. This is your go-to place for everything that you want to find out about NXP software, tools, and enablement, specifically tailored for those processors and microcontrollers that you're evaluating. And I'm one of your co-hosts, Kyle Dando.
And I'm Bridgette Stone. Welcome back, everyone. Today, Kyle and I are talking about something that a lot of developers may not fully understand, but honestly can make a huge difference in a project's success. NXP's Distribution Field Application Engineers, or DFAEs.
And Bridgette, the timing could not be more perfect because NXP just wrapped up our annual Distribution FAE Training event here in Austin, Texas.
Which, Kyle, I think you were heavily involved in and have been talking about nonstop.
That's fair. That's fair. I feel like every year it's a bigger task, but it's super rewarding.
Yes, and seriously, this topic is actually really interesting because developers often hear names like Avnet, Arrow, Digi-Key, Future, or Mouser, but may not realize how much technical support and enablement those teams provide behind the scenes.
Exactly. And distribution has honestly been a huge part of my career and my life. I spent 10 years at Avnet, plus another 10 years supporting distribution while at semiconductor companies, including NXP. So this is definitely something close to my heart.
20 years. So basically you are distribution at this point?
Well, I may be a part distributor by now.
All right, Kyle. So let's start there. For listeners that may not know anything about this event, what exactly is distribution FAE training and why does NXP invest so heavily in it?
Okay, Bridgette, well, let's step back a second. I want to just make it clear what a distributor is. NXP relies on our distribution channel to engage lots of customers. So in that case, the distributor has to have many roles. First, it's pretty obvious they have a sales team, and they are really strong at communicating with the customers. They're actually our ears and eyes in the field so that NXP doesn't have to be everywhere, but the distributors feed back to us. They consult with those customers, they hear about their projects, and when their projects start up, they have to manage stocking those products and also the pricing that we give those customers. And then very important is the technical support the distributor adds. So when a new project starts, the distribution field applications engineers are typically the first person who will reach out to that customer. They'll listen to the requirements of the customer, and then they'll provide their technical solutions that they've learned about. And finally, and this is the funny one, we often joke, they act as a bank. I mean, ultimately, these distributors provide customers a large line of credit. And what a better way to purchase a ton of components on your bill of material than spreading it across credit. Sort of like how we manage our expenses in my household. So it's critical that NXP elevates the knowledge of our distribution partners so that when Digi-Key, Mouser, Avnet, Future, or Arrow, when they go out and they train customers on those important new technologies, they're up to speed.
So they're not just helping somebody buy a chip, they're helping customers figure out what solution actually makes sense.
Exactly. And because of that, it's critical that NXP keeps these engineers trained on our latest technologies, tools, and platforms. This year, we had over 100 engineers attend from our major 5 distributors.
This isn't just an Americas thing either, correct?
Correct. Now, the event in Austin was tailored for the American distributors, but we have similar events across Europe and APAC as well. This training was 4 days in the Americas. NXP provided a great format this year. They switched it up a little bit. There were lectures that covered technology concepts, and then there were those traditional labs where the FAEs got their hands on the tools and the software and those really awesome evaluation boards. But this year, they also provided smaller breakout sessions where engineers that had sort of a specialty, they could go into these breakout rooms and they could focus on specific tech pillars like motor control, AI/ML, wireless, even automotive. So by the end of the week, we hope that we've trained our partners to better understand and represent those solutions that they learned when they reach out to the customers directly.
All right, Kyle, here's the question I think a lot of listeners are probably asking right now. Why should a customer work with the distributor or distribution FAE instead of just going directly to NXP?
Well, I'd like to start with an analogy I once heard when I was in a meeting at Avnet. There was an executive meeting and somebody asked that same question. And one of the leaders at Avnet said, you know, It's often that we hear this question from customers, and we like to respond that we're the mutual fund of the electronics industry. Similar to when we're looking to invest, you could invest on one specific stock, but you have to be absolutely certain that that's what you need. Whereas a mutual fund will balance and bring in multiple semiconductors, bring in multiple investments so that you can hedge your bets. And that's what the distributor brings. So when I need somebody to come out and help me understand the technical solutions available for my problems, it's a good idea to bring in the distributor because they provide that breadth of knowledge. They're going to bring in multiple solutions from multiple suppliers and allow you to evaluate it. Then when you've engaged and you understand what's available, then you might get the distribution FAE to connect you with some subject matter experts at the suppliers, but you get to make that decision on your own.
So they've probably seen a huge variety of real world projects, meaning they've seen somebody else make the exact same mistake before.
Exactly. So that will save customers a ton of time. Another big advantage is the responsiveness, because often the distribution FAEs are in those customers on a weekly basis, so they can act really quick to the customer's needs. They're also huge advocates for the customers inside NXP. NXP doesn't know about all the customers that are out there. So if something needs to be escalated or we need to get that deeper support at a customer, the DFAE is the one who will connect the customer with the subject matter expert within NXP because they're the one who can communicate that technical issue so that NXP can support the distribution FAE.
Basically becoming a bridge between customers and NXP engineering.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to describe it.
I imagine a lot of developers are under pressure to move very fast. So having someone who already knows the ecosystem probably saves weeks of trial and error.
Absolutely. Sometimes customers are evaluating processors. They're trying to understand all the software compatibility, the security requirements, wireless certifications. Having someone who's already worked through similar designs can dramatically shorten development time. And that's what makes sense with these distribution FAEs.
All right, now for the fun part. What were some of the coolest technologies or sessions you saw during the week?
Well, obviously, Bridget, my session was probably the best one.
Naturally.
No, but honestly, I helped put together a lab with a large group, and we included VS Code, the configuration tools, and the SEC provisioning tool. So at the end of the lab, the distribution FAA knew how to educate a customer from the start and to the end of building a product. In addition, I did see some other classes that were pretty exciting. There was a Zephyr class that I helped out with. In that class, they walked through all the Zephyr development flow. They introduced some of our new device tree configuration tools, helping the FAs understand what's next in Zephyr. There were classes on security and AI enablement. And what I really liked about this year was that smaller classroom format around those tech pillars. So instead of one giant training, the engineers could customize their curriculum and take the classes that meant most to their local customers.
Which means the conversations were way more practical as well.
Absolutely. The feedback from the DFAEs that attended was really positive. The FAs loved getting their hands on the latest software and tools. Those evaluation boards, they took them home with them. And the labs, instead of just sitting through PowerPoint presentations day in and day out, they were really working through problems, applying some of the technology to their own customers, and getting excited about taking it back home.
Engineers liking hands-on labs more than PowerPoints. Just absolutely shocking.
Yeah, we like to sit behind screens and nerd out with blinking LEDs and printing hello world. Those are the kind of things that make an engineer's day.
Now, if I'm listening to this episode as a developer or customer, how does all this training actually help me?
Okay, so the biggest takeaway from this training for our listeners is that it's designed to be shared. So think of it as a train the trainer model. All of those labs and presentations, all that technical knowledge that we gave to those FAEs, it's intended to help you as the customer. So when those distribution engineers meet with you, they have new content, they have a deep understanding, and they can get really to the heart of how the new technology fits your needs. And I actually saw a great example of this, Bridget. I was sitting next to my friend George Lesko during one of the classes, and he leaned over to me.
Shout out, George.
That's right. Go Ohio. So George leaned over to me and he said, Kyle, I attended a class that talked about a new PMIC solution from NXP. It's extremely small. And I immediately made a connection with one of my local customers who's building a secure lock. And he said, I need to get this to my customer right away. He said, so I sent the customer some initial information on the product. He gave him a link to the website. Within 2 hours, the customer was responding back to George saying, hey, this looks like a really good fit. Can you get me the evaluation board? We want to start evaluating it right away.
That's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, George is a good FAE, and I think he got a lot out of the training. That's just the kind of value that I've seen. I've been going to these things for, like I said, 20 years. So I see that value. It happens all the time. Customers gaining faster access to the ideas and the technology, all those connections to the NXP subject matter experts. That's what these events are all about. The distributors don't have to operate alone either. NXP has set these events up to where by the end of the event, those FAEs have a contact within the factory to help when they have to escalate technical questions. When those customer opportunities come to them, they want to work fast, and so it helps them to establish these really good relationships with NXP at the factory. So the great thing is after this event, so many of the distributor FAEs will start hosting workshops. They'll take the hands-on labs and all that class material, and they'll start training the customers in their local market. So developers can often access the same technologies and tools we covered during the week.
Well, Kyle, I definitely learned a lot from this one. I think most people know distributors help with purchasing and logistics, but they may not realize just how much technical expertise and hands-on support these DFAE teams provide. And honestly, after hearing about the training event, it's easy to see why NXP invests so heavily into these partnerships.
Absolutely. You know, a strong ecosystem matters, and distribution FAEs are a huge part of that. They help the customers move fast and build better products. Now, to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, but more importantly, reach out to your FAE and see if you can get connected to some of this training. Turn on the notifications so that you won't miss the next episode of the EdgeVerse TechCast.
And if today's episode taught you anything, it's this. Don't be afraid to leverage your distribution engineering teams. There's a lot of expertise sitting there ready to help you move faster.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Until next time, keep innovating, reach out to your local DFAE, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the EdgeVerse TechCast.